Big cities are nearly impossible to buy mobile home parks in. The land is incredibly scarce. The mobile home parks that are there are dramatically overpriced. That's where all the big players play ball. You got to pay sub five cap in most cases to even get rocking and rolling. It is just impossible to get started there. Unless your name is Victor, and that's all you do. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you my friend and former mentee, Victor. Victor did the mentorship program with me about a year ago, and then he just started buying. He has now bought 3 mobile home parks, about 109 lots in just 8 months. This man is an absolute machine. His We can get into how much fun we had talking about how much you cold called, man. You were just an animal. And we're going to talk about how he got to the point where he is able to do all of that in a year, because he was like me. He started with nothing, and he made a big bet on himself, and he just ripped it. So he just needed a nudge in the right direction, and then he flew. So lots to talk about here, Victor. Man, here's where I want to get started. You had no money, you had no experience. It's 2015. That's the same year I started. What were you thinking?
I know. So yeah. By the way, Ryan, thanks for having me
Yeah.
on the podcast. Also, I need to put this plug in here. Is that because of your podcast and your second episode is where I got my wife convinced to let us go on this crazy adventure too. When you have your wife there, so I think I mentioned this once, but like I really wanted to point it out. It's a great episode if you're a couple. Uh,
Thank you. It's funny because it is usually the most favorite episode,
yeah.
but it's also the least favorite episode by those who are single and don't have that pressure. They're like, I can
Yeah.
skip this. And everybody like us who's married, who's getting resisted from their significant other, they love that episode. So if you haven't listened, go
You
listen,
should.
folks. It's episode 2 on my podcast.
Exactly. Awesome episode. But going back to 2015, I was working. So I'm originally born and raised in Brazil. I came to Texas on a tennis scholarship. After that, I got a job in sales, moved to San Antonio with my wife, which is back then was my girlfriend. We were working. After that, I had a little interruption, with my visa situation with my job. And so we're able still stay the visa, stay in the country legally, but I couldn't work for anybody but myself. And at that point, I had to make like a decision on what I was going to do. So actually, my wife took me to one of these seminars that teach you how to flip houses. We ended up buying the mentorship. So we actually didn't start with zero, we started with negative. Um, and so, and then we just kind of like, your back's against the wall. We had 1 bedroom apartment that's my office with my laptop. And I just started cold calling and, doing, everything that my mentors told me to do. We did end up buying like 6 wholesale deals and started flipping houses. And, throughout this course, we've done over 100 flips in our career. We ended up having a partner that went sour as well in late 2019. And then that's when we made the decision of like, hey, do we rebuild this flipping craziness machine, which is so inconsistent and makes you like, want to tear your hair out every 2 days? Or do you want to let's build something more stable? So we came and got introduced to multifamily and mobile home parks. And mobile home parks actually came from a private lender of mine that wanted to invest in it, but didn't want to do work. So he'd been lending me money for years. He's like, hey, I want to invest in parks, but I don't want to do any of the work. I want you to manage it for me, and we partner in it. So long story, I started in, kind of looking into and trying to understand the asset class. And then late 2020 is when I started like, okay, let me just go and start, putting some offers. And then I realized that I didn't really know how to underwrite, and I didn't know where to know because like I didn't have like a good mentorship. And that's when I came across you guys. And then, the accountability of getting me to do stuff with, the extra information that I was missing is what got me to, where I am today with the parks.
I love how you say that you started with zero, then you bought a program. So you're really negative because Ian and I were the same way. We did the Frank and Dave thing, which gave
Yeah.
us an excellent base to
Hmm.
build off of. And that's what you did. I can't
Hmm.
remember
Yeah.
who gets credit for this. I think it was maybe Grant Cardone. If you have $1,000, how do you make $1 million? And the answer was you invest in your education.
Hmm.
So I love to hear that. And I want to spend a little more time on it because you're really reminiscent of my friend Ryan Groney, who, when I interviewed him, I just stopped him in the middle of the interview and I just went, "You are so nonchalant about making a colossal sacrifice that most people who end up never taking action just can't do."
Yeah.
Victor, what is it and how do you have it and how do you describe the feeling and more importantly, how did you overcome that with negative money, no experience into something as capital intensive as flipping homes? How? Let's talk about the mindset for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I think a lot of it comes from my athlete days, right? I feel like, you have to overcome a lot of things. I play tennis, and you're typically by yourself in the court. So you're literally having to overcome all these like difficulties and challenges kind of by yourself, and you have ups and downs. So I think that's one of the things. And you're also thought about coaching, right? Like you don't play tennis without somebody teaching you how to play. So I think that's one of the mindsets. And the second thing is a good support system. Like I joked around about her listening. That's why she got convinced. But my wife has always had my back on everything real estate. And she's the one that actually took me to the seminar to start with. So having that, person that's always pushing you, do. And I think in some crazy level, I also like to, you know, have my, have put a little bit of fire on my behind, on purpose. So
That's fun, man. I didn't know the athlete part. I just know that when we first met, you said you wanted to make something like $1 million a month. And I went, this is I cannot help you with that, dude. So I love that you say accountability and coaching, right? So you bring that mindset from tennis because I love working out. I'm a big runner. And the truth is, if I really wanted to get to that next level, I would absolutely hire a coach. I personally have a coach right now. I will
Mhm.
always believe in finding someone, paid or unpaid, who's done what you want to do. And that's rather than listening to someone who doesn't have what you want, trying to teach you
Mhm.
how to get what you want and they've never done it, go right to someone who's done it. So I love hearing that. But so to me, it sounds like what kind of got you over that hump, that I'm scared of the risk, I'm scared of the uncertainty. What got you over that was your competitive edge. And I know your wife will be listening. So your love for your significant other. Did I hear that correctly?
That is very true. Let's get some bonus points there.
For
No,
those
yeah.
of us, why don't you spend a minute talking about this competitive edge? Because for those of us listening in who are definitely more risk averse, how can you coach them, if you will? How can you help them convince themselves to make a big bet on themselves?
Oh man, that's a tough question, right? But let's see if I can, kind of translate in my own way, kind of how I go about it is, I think a lot of times, we're always scared of things that we don't know. So again, going back to the education, like finding good people to support you is definitely going to help you over that hump. But at the end of the day, is like, it's going to be within yourself to want more. You can't teach somebody to want more. You just have to come out today and be like, I'm going to give you a perfect example. I played tennis, my whole life basically. And then after college, I made an excuse to myself that I was done with like being an athlete. So I just became, like, I would play, a couple times, but I wouldn't work out at all. So last year I went to this business conference, but it had 1 day of physical activity. Okay. And things like normal, like running and, playing some games, like nothing really like insane. And I literally the next day could not walk. Like I could not move my legs. I was a whole week like in pain, like in like serious pain. And that moment I realized I was like, I need to do something. So then I signed up for a gym that my wife was going to, and I work out 5 days a week, no excuses, whatever time I'll figure out a time to do it. And that's what it took. And I think whenever I, started is I was kind of my back against the wall because of the job thing, but I was like, I want to make my life better, not put myself in the same position that I was before. And that's what got me to that level. So there's always like a pivotal moment, but I think at the end of the day is for me, it's support. If you got the right people around you that can help you, guide you on the things that you don't know, then I feel so much lighter in taking these risks because I know that I'll find the answers from the people around me. Yeah.
So you get the accountability helps give you that confidence. So
I think so.
forcing a network and finding accountability is what you credit to getting to that next level. And you're right. There's always going to be unknowns. I've been doing this for almost going on 7 years now, and there's still a ton of stuff I don't know. And
Yeah.
it really all it comes down to for me is I'm pretty sure I know where to get the answer if I don't know it now. So one other thing I love hearing, because I hear this quite a bit with folks who just come out of nowhere and grow in a way that others are like, there's no way you can do that, is that you talk about how your back is against the wall. You talk about how you felt there were no other options. And I'll throw a quote out from rapper Little Dicky, who in his interview song with professional rapper, what it's called, with
Mm-hmm.
Snoop Dogg, he says, in so many words, I wasn't one of the ones up on the block with nothing to lose. I must have wanted this a lot. I had something to choose. And what he meant in that line was he went to University of Richmond. He had a cushy corporate job, funneled into a middle class lifestyle. It would have been
Mm-hmm.
very easy for him to just get into Netflix and
Mm-hmm.
going to hang out with your friends and just falling into getting a mortgage and getting stuck. And as he describes it in that song, it's not like being in the projects. There's a different kind of trap, that trap being a comfortable middle class lifestyle. And what I'm hearing from you on your journey, Victor, is now you might be able to credit it to your competitive nature, but it was beyond that. You coming from Brazil, you just
Mm-hmm.
found a way to put your back against the wall and to say, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm just going to do it. We're going to burn the ships. I'm not going to have something to choose. I'm just going to go. And I went through the same thing. One day I just woke up and I went, this is what I want. The alternative,
Mm-hmm.
going back to corporate America, is not an option for me. I'm going to find a way to make this work. If I got to suffer for years, I'm going to do it. Now, the good news for the two of us is we didn't.
Yeah.
Tell me, you had no money, you had negative money, sorry, you had
Yeah.
no experience, you had no network, you got into something like flipping homes. I'm assuming you had to use other people's money, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did
That's
you
true.
convince someone that you were trustworthy and you
Worthy.
could do it?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the credibility was built from, again, the network, right? From the coaching, they taught you how to like talk to the lenders, kind of using, their system. So I was very like reliant on the way I was going to run things, and then just networking and getting people to like you, right? And also like I didn't start flipping right away. So I wholesaled a few deals. So just found a house and give it to somebody else. And then I could show them like, hey, this is what the guy did on a deal that I found, but I didn't want to buy it because I didn't have the money and I didn't have the, cojones to take it on myself with somebody's money. And so I was like, okay, let me go ahead and, show them what I've wholesaled, build that relationship, and then, finally found somebody that believed in me, and talked to a lot of people too. Like, I think that's as volume makes a big difference, because you're going to I talk to friends, I talk to family, and those were the hardest ones to convince, for me. The people that I talked on real estate meetings and stuff like that, those people like actually gave me more of a benefit of the doubt than my own family, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, so that's kind of how I went about it.
It's funny because at my wedding back in 2015, my dad, my own father, pulled Ian aside and said, "Hey, Ian, my son's looking into this mobile home park thing and it sounds like a scam. And I know you're in real estate. Can you go talk to him?" So we hadn't put two and two together that Ian and I had started this business. So of course Ian's like, "Sure, I'll have a word with Ryan." And we still kind of laugh at that. My dad, for years, because my dad is a college professor, or was a college professor, thought that what I was getting into was either a scam or it was monopoly money. And it's funny now. So we were at a Charlotte Hornets game about a month ago. And I was like, "Hey, Dad, monopoly money turns out to be real currency." So now we get to laugh about it. But like you mentioned, episode 2 of my podcast, like I mentioned with my dad, it took him years to really convince. And man, it's sometimes the people you're closest to are the hardest to convince. And I don't think it's necessarily from a position of them being nefarious or being dream killers or trying to get in
Mhm.
your way. I just genuinely think that they want what's best for you. And it's not that they're trying to hold you down, it's more that they are trying to be
Protect you.
supportive and protective of you because they want what's best for you. And most people just don't understand, like an athlete like yourself, what it takes, the sacrifice, the unknown unknowns to get there. And they love you and they want to make sure you're okay. So, man, I know exactly what you went through, man. That, and I agree. Your family is usually, it's funny because my in-laws now are like, "Well, can we park money with you?" I'm like, "Guys, I've done like 30 deals." Where were you at the beginning? It's okay. So it's just funny how sometimes it's your own family that are the hardest to win over at the end of the day. So I like hearing that. You're not
Yeah,
alone.
it's
And those listening in, you're also not alone because
yeah,
I'm sure that
exactly.
happens all the time.
No, it's a funny thing, but it's true. Like, I think it doesn't come from like you said, a place of, distrust. It comes from a place of protection, I think. Like, or, it's like, hey, I think he's going in too deep there. Let me hold him back. Like, let hold him back so he doesn't hurt himself, type of situation. But yeah.
As a father, I can relate
Yeah.
because there's just nothing more in this world than you want if you're a parent
Yeah.
than to protect your children and have them be everything that they want and get everything they want out of this life. And I think having gone through what you and I've gone through to start our
Mhm.
respective businesses, I would hope that I will let go of that a little bit and hope
Mhm.
that my son goes out there and fails
Yeah.
because I he needs to have his back against the wall to really get to that next level. So I love that. And I want to transition a little bit now into the mobile
Mhm.
home park game because you took
Cool.
this athlete mindset, you took the love you have of your wife and and the accountability that she and others helped give you. And you got into the mobile home park realm specifically in basically under a year, start to finish. You now own 100 lots in San Antonio, Texas, which is nuts. And right before we hit go, I actually had to check and see how many I owned in my own hometown of Charlotte. I lost count. I'm up to 10 now, which is nuts to think about. When I started
Mhm.
a bunch of years ago, I was a victim of that. I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to afford to buy something in Charlotte, or at least it was going to take a long time. And then flash forward, now I've got double digits in my hometown, which is, and hundreds of lots and multiple employees. It's really, really cool stuff.
Crazy.
So the question is, because you're doing it and you're doing it out of the gate, Victor, how the heck are you competing in San Antonio, Texas?
Well, I think that the key is, just like, I think so. The trick is calling, right? Talking to people. That's the secret sauce. But I think, it's like we've talked so many times, is about trying to build that relationship. And every once in a while, if you're doing the right things, you'll get, what I hate using the word, but it's lucky. You'll get that one that's right, and it's right on that time that you call, and you build enough rapport, and it just happens. So I think, like, that's the key there is, being able to stay consistent on what you're doing, and talking to the owners, and trying to, and obviously, like, building relationship with brokers are important, but you're typically gonna be like, brokers, their job is to find the seller the most money. So if you want to, kind of get the best, deals, that you're not going to be paying 100% market, or a little bit above market, to get the property, I think, is going after the owners, and just being consistent. That's the key.
I recall your homework being 100 cold calls a week.
Yep. I didn't always get there, but I got pretty close a few times.
You didn't. And I remember Devin and Andrew occasionally would rock you, and we would kind of pick on you a little bit and be like, hey, man, your other mentees here are getting the job done. And then I remember Andrew's story was nuts, how that snowstorm hit Texas and he was like cold calling by candlelight, which is nuts. And, you make your own luck, is what it sounds like. You just look, if you aren't picking up the phone, or you're only picking up the phone occasionally, I mean, I just can't feel sorry for you. A friend of mine in Charlotte here was really bummed to find out that I had put a deal that he offered on 2 years ago under contract. And I made him feel better because I'm paying way more than him. But at the same time, you have to have consistent follow-up. And even though he said he did, you also have to think a little bit differently and offer a little bit differently. In real estate, it's easy because you also can offer a little bit more money. But the funny thing is, my wife and I went to this property together. And when they decided that they were going to go with our offer, the matriarch called my wife, not me. I didn't get the phone call. My wife got the phone call, and then my wife negotiated seller carry over the phone. And I was like, oh,
what's going on right
that's
now?
amazing. That's amazing. So in other words, it's not just the consistency and the follow-up. In my example, it was also taking a unique approach. Yes, paying more. We all have to pay more. 10 caps are long gone. If they ever really even existed in the way we think that they did, they're long gone, right? Like, at the end of the day, you have to be different on top of being consistent. Victor, how do you find ways to be different?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I try to do is, I have a lot of, local knowledge, right? I've been in the real estate game for, going on 7 years now. And so I know a lot of people in town. So a lot of times, what I used to, like, try to build a little bit of differentiator with the people is, like, I would ask them, like, hey, what do you need right now? Like, and it would kind of get people by surprise. Like, hey, do you need anything right now in your business, on your property that you're looking for? And just try to, provide that value out of the gate. That's one thing that in sales that I always remember when I worked for in the sales, is like, we always had like these gifts and stuff. So we would bring like these free gifts from our company to the client, right off the gate. And they're like, oh my God, like, this guy's giving me something that I didn't ask for. So, like, I kind of feel like a little bit more obligated to listen to him or be nicer to him, and that kind of situation. But the other component of it is, I think it's just being honest. Like, you're trying to build a relationship, but you're also trying to tell them what you're looking for. I feel like that's my my approach. I don't think I do anything special, but also listening to what they want to say. I think the first part, which is the one, like, smack in the middle of San Antonio, which is that one. The gentleman wanted to get like before I even give you anything, I need to get like $10,000 non-refundable deposit. I'm not going to give you any financials, anything. This is the price, and take it or leave it. And I'm like, shoot, I don't even know if the thing performs, but we talked about it as like, hey, price per pad, kind of knowing the area very well, done my comps because I was like researching every single park in San Antonio or in around San Antonio. I was like, okay, I feel comfortable with risking 10 grand, just to see if there's anything there. Right. Funny story though, is that once we agreed on the price, he went up on his price because he looked at his financials and he saw the park produces more than he thought it would produce. And so he went like, oh, I actually want more. And then we kind of met in the middle, and the rest is history. But it was a funny story there.
That's funny. I also had Sam Hales on the podcast who wired $100,000 with no contract.
I
That
heard
was
that
a
one.
nuts story. I do admit that I have done hard money. Actually, one time I sat down with a gentleman, went through a contract with him, then gave him a check for hard money. I made him look me in the face and sign it with me, and then he busted out moonshine and we drank moonshine together, which was delicious, by the way. Probably very illegal, but unbelievably delicious. It's funny, the stories that you make and sometimes the risks that you have to take and be okay with if you're wrong. A very close friend of mine is made a big bet. He put $50,000 non-refundable and is now having to back out of the deal because he found something that was wrong. And he's unfortunately probably going to have to litigate to get at least some of his $50,000 back. It happens. It definitely happens when someone misrepresents something. For example, they say, hey, I got some extra acreage. It's zoned for this. And you have you do quick and you pull and everything looks to check out. And then finally you get under contract. And a couple of weeks later, you finally go and you really dig deep and you find out the zoning hasn't been updated yet. That's what's going on with my friend right now. And so everything at a quick looked fine, but then you start digging and it turns out none of those lots actually exist anymore. And the zoning department just hasn't updated it yet. So now the guy knew it. And so now my friend has a case to go and sue this guy, like, hey, you misrepresented this property. And that happens. That's a risk you take. But so zooming back on you though, that's what you did. You basically took a risk. You were like $10,000, and for my buddy, he would do it all over again, guaranteed. So for me, I've publicly stated that I've lost $36,000 on a deal before because of COVID, because the bank, long story short, the bank seized up during COVID and we lost all our due diligence money because someone swooped in while we were out of contract. Happens. But, zooming back on you, Victor, is it fair to say, or would you recommend at least, that going in your backyard is your best bet?
I think so. I know people go back and forth on this, especially on mobile home parks, because your backyard might not have a lot of them, your immediate backyard. But if you live near like a bigger city and you have enough, I would say go first in your backyard. You understand it better. You have a better grip on things that are happening. Like I literally can drive 20 minutes to my park if I really feel like I need to. And so I would highly recommend, especially if you're first, you have no experience, especially if you have no experience in real estate all together. Just stay in your backyard and be the best in your backyard, and then start branching out. So this year, our goal is to start going after parks all across Texas. Still we focus a lot in our backyard and near our thing, but we're like, okay, let's expand because we want to grow more, and so it gives us more opportunities.
I love to hear that, and I couldn't agree more. It's a question of impatience or impossibility. If you're in New York City, which a lot of people I know are in New York City and they're trying to buy mobile home parks, it's basically impossible, right? There's no reasonably priced mobile home park anywhere close to New York City. I know a lot of people in Miami, Florida, who run into something very similar where it's just impossible to find anything near Miami. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've found plenty. You're in San Antonio, Texas. You found plenty. There's plenty of folks in other cities like Atlanta or even Houston. I know some folks in the Houston area. There are plenty of bigger cities, right, that have professional football teams, professional basketball teams that are bona fide big cities. And it's not impossible. It's not. And I couldn't agree more, man. If you can get in the car and drive, especially when you're starting out, that's preferable. But I will also say this, if it's between getting started at all and waiting for the right deal in your backyard, you got to find a way to get in the game.
I agree.
Victor, to end off, is it fair to say you are Mr. San Antonio?
I don't know about that, but it's soon enough. The goal is to be Mr. San Antonio. So, you know, if I can adopt the name right now, I'll take it.
That's a funny story. Wake Forest University right here. Tim Duncan retired right when you and I started becoming friends, and we both bonded over
Yeah.
Tim's success at the Spurs. So I wouldn't call myself a Spurs fan. I'm a Hornets fan, but boy, I
Come on, you're
love
a
Timmy.
Spurs fan. Yeah. You are a Spurs fan. You're undercover Spurs fan.
Victor, thank you so much for coming on, man. How can folks find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. If they want to reach out to me, you can reach out, find me on social media, Victor Alves, and that's Alves. Or you can send me an email at Victor at Vecno Capital, which is VECNO capital.com.
I will drop that in the show links. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Reach out to Victor. He's an awesome guy and is definitely worth your time getting to know. Victor, thanks again, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.